Summary of the Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. The Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin begins with a letter addressed to Franklin's son, William Franklin, explaining why Franklin has undertaken the task of writing his life story. He claims it is for the benefit of his future generations or offspring, but also to gratify his own vanity. He continues by describing several of his ancestors, including his grandfather, Thomas Franklin Sr., and father, Josiah Franklin. Then Franklin begins his life story, describing how he was born in Boston in 1706, briefly attended grammar school at the age of 8, and eventually apprenticed as a printer to his brother James Franklin. From his earliest years, reading was a vital part of Franklin's self-improvement. While working for his brother, he read extensively, adopted a vegetarian diet, and submitted several anonymous pieces of writing to the New England Courant, his brother's newspaper. His brother published them, bolstering Franklin's pride and eventually inspiring him to violate his terms of service and flee, first to New York and then to Philadelphia. Franklin found work as a journeyman printer almost immediately in Philadelphia, first for printer Andrew Bradford and then for printer Mr. Keimer. Robert Holmes, his brother-in-law, convinced him to return to Boston and seek his father's blessing. He did, received it, and returned to Philadelphia with his friend John Collins, a drunk who had racked up debts prior to Franklin's move to the West Indies. Governor Keith of Pennsylvania promised to assist Franklin in establishing a new printing house and dispatched him to England to purchase the necessary supplies. Franklin departed, but Governor Keith did not follow through on his promise. Franklin worked for printers in London to improve his knowledge of the trade and earn enough money to return to America. After about 18 months, Mr. Denham, a friend Franklin made on the voyage to England, offered Franklin employment as a clerk for his merchant business. Franklin agreed and returned to Philadelphia with Denham, but Denham died shortly afterwards. Franklin returned to work for Mr. Keimer following Denham's death, and upon learning that Keimer intended to steal his knowledge and terminate his employment, he struck a deal with one of Keimer's other employees, Hugh Meredith, to form a partnership. The two quickly established their own printing house, and Franklin, after eventually purchasing Meredith out of the partnership, established numerous important civic institutions, including the colony's first lending library, the Academy that would eventually become the University of Pennsylvania, and the first company of firemen. Along the way, he describes errors he made, which he refers to as Errata, which he believes he was able to partially rectify later on by living properly. Franklin then presents one of his key methods for self-improvement, the Art of Virtue, a 13-week self-improvement cycle in which Franklin exercised 13 virtues, focusing on one each week in Part 2 of his book. Additionally, he discusses his daily schedule. Part 3 picks up where Part 1 left off, with accounts of Franklin's military service during the French and Indian War, as well as a synopsis of some of his scientific experiments and publications on electricity. Franklin also uses Part 3 to elaborate on his civic accomplishments, including how he convinced Philadelphia to pave and then light its streets. Between Parts 3 and 4, there is little transition. Franklin describes in Part 4 a diplomatic mission he undertook in London in order to argue on behalf of the Pennsylvania Assembly against the proprietary governor's tax-exempt status. The mission was partially successful, and the autobiography comes to an end, though it remains incomplete.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.